I trusted my teacher. I thought he was just strict, maybe a little weird, but harmless. Then I found a folder with notes, photos, and recordings of me and other students. That's when I realized he wasn't just observing us. He was controlling us. Here's the story of how we exposed him before it was too late. When Mr. Grayson first walked into our classroom, I thought he was just another teacher who didn't want to be there. You know, the tight gray slacks, button-down shirt tucked in a little too tightly, glasses that reflected the fluorescent lights. He didn't smile when he introduced himself. He didn't bother with any fun fact about yourself icebreakers like most teachers do on the first day of class. He just walked to the board, wrote his name in big block letters, Mr. Grayson, and turned around with a stare that made the whole room fall silent. "This class is not a joke," he said flatly. "If you think it will be easy, you're in the wrong place." That was it. No warmth, no welcome, just a warning. At first, I figured he was one of those hard-ass teachers who secretly cared. The kind who acted mean, but deep down, wanted the best for you. My mom always said those were the teachers who prepared you for the real world. But within the first week, I started noticing things that didn't add up. For one, he never mentioned where he came from. Our school had a tradition: new teachers usually gave a little introduction, told us what college they went to, why they loved teaching. Mr. Grayson never did. When one kid, Ben, asked what school he taught at before ours, Grayson just stared at him until Ben muttered an apology and sat down. He also had this weird habit of keeping his desk completely empty. No photos, no coffee mug, not even a pen holder. Just stacks of papers and his black leather briefcase, which he always kept locked. If a student got too close to it, he would immediately step over, place a hand on the case, and tell them to return to their seat. By week 2, rumors were already spreading. Some said he used to be in the military. Others swore he got fired from another school for yelling at a kid. One girl claimed she saw him in the grocery store late at night buying nothing but canned soup and energy drinks, like some kind of recluse. I wanted to ignore it. But then he started paying attention to me. Too much attention. It wasn't the good kind either. He would call on me constantly, even when my hand wasn't raised. If I got an answer wrong, he'd stand over me and ask me to explain my reasoning in front of the whole class. When I finally snapped and asked why he always picked on me, he said, "Because you look like someone who thinks he can get away with things." I don't like that look. The whole class went silent. I laughed nervously, but he didn't smile. He just went back to the board like nothing happened. From that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. One afternoon, I stayed after class to finish a test. The hallway was empty, and the school was quiet. As I bubbled in my last answer, I heard him moving around at his desk. When I looked up, he wasn't there. His briefcase was open. It was only for a second. I swear I didn't imagine it, but I saw a stack of folders inside, each labeled with a student's name. My name was on one of them. I blinked, and just like that, he was back at his desk. The case closed, key in his hand. He didn't say a word, just stared at me until I packed my bag and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment in my head. Why would a teacher keep secret folders on his students? And why did it feel like my folder was thicker than everyone else's? The next day, when I told my best friend Ryan about it, he laughed. "Dude, maybe it's just lesson plans or grades. Don't make it weird." But it was weird. And it only got worse. A few days later, I found a note tucked inside my locker. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was sharp, neat, and unmistakably his. "Stop asking questions you don't want answers to." I hadn't told anyone else about the briefcase. Not a word. The only way he could have known was if he had been watching me. That was the first time I realized I couldn't trust Mr. Grayson. Not at all. After that note in my locker, I stopped thinking of Mr. Grayson as just the strict teacher. He wasn't just strict. He was something else, there's something I couldn't quite name yet. Every time he walked past my desk, I felt my stomach tighten. I tried telling myself I was overreacting. Maybe the note wasn't from him. Maybe I was being paranoid. But then things started happening that I couldn't explain away. Like the time he called me into his classroom after school. I just finished basketball practice and was on my way out when I heard his voice from the empty classroom. "Ethan." A word. My sneakers squeaked on the linoleum as I stepped inside. The blinds were drawn even though it was still daylight. The room felt warmer than usual, like the air itself had been trapped. He closed the door behind me. "Sit." I sat. He stood by the window, his hands behind his back. "You've been distracted lately." "I'm fine," I said quickly. "You're not fine," he replied. "And you're asking questions you don't need to ask. Curiosity is dangerous at your age." My mouth went dry. "I don't know what you're talking about." He turned then, his glasses reflecting the weak sunlight. "Don't you?" He let the question hang there before suddenly smiling, the thin, brittle smile. "Go on. You're free to leave." I practically bolted from the room. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the folders. My folder. Why was my name on it? What was he keeping in there? I decided to find out. The next day, I stayed after school again, but this time I had a plan. Ryan had agreed to help me. He'd keep watch near the stairwell while I slipped into the classroom. Mr. Grayson had a habit of leaving his briefcase on his desk when he went to the teacher's lounge. If I timed it right, I could at least snap a photo of the inside. My heart hammered as I waited outside the classroom. Ryan texted, "Coast clear." I slipped inside. The room smelled like chalk and coffee. His briefcase sat on the desk, locked as always. But next to it was a small brass key. My hands shook as I picked it up. The lock clicked open. Inside were at least 20 folders, each with a student's name written neatly on the tab. I flipped through them: Nana, Marcus, then Leah. My fingers froze when I found mine. I opened it. It wasn't grades. It wasn't lesson plans. It was notes. Detailed notes. Ethan M. Mother single. Father absent. Good at sports. Talks back occasionally. Suspicious of authority. Prone to snooping. There were even photographs: me walking home from school, me at the gas station, me sitting in the bleachers at a game. None of them could have been taken from the classroom. A noise at the door made me jump, looking for something. Mr. Grayson stood there, holding a cup of coffee, his expression unreadable. I dropped the folder back into the case and stumbled backward. I was just too curious. He finished for me. He set the coffee down and stepped closer. Curiosity can be dangerous, Ethan. I grabbed my backpack and bolted past him into the hall. Ryan was gone. That night, another note appeared in my locker. Last warning. This time, the handwriting wasn't just neat, it was underlined. I showed it to Ryan, but he only shrugged. "Man, you're making him mad. Maybe you should just back off." "Back off from what?" I hissed. "He's spying on us. Look at this." I showed him the photo I'd snapped of my folder before Grayson caught me. Ryan stared at it, then looked away. "Okay, that's messed up. But what are you gonna do?" "Tell the principal. He's like the golden boy here. Everyone loves him." And it was true. To the other teachers, Grayson was a model employee. He stayed late, volunteered for committees, even coached the debate team. Parents thought he was brilliant. Kids either feared him or adored him. I realized then, if I was going to stop him, I couldn't count on adults. That night, I texted my dad. We weren't close, he'd moved out years ago, but he was the only adult I trusted. "Can we talk?" He called me right away. "Ethan, what's going on?" I hesitated, then told him everything. The folders, the notes, the photos. There was a long pause. "Don't do anything stupid," he said finally. "I'll look into this." "Look into it how? Just trust me." But trusting anyone felt impossible now. Even my own father. And the next day, when one of my classmates, Ben, didn't show up to school and nobody seemed to know why, I felt my stomach drop. Something was happening. And Mr. Grayson was at the center of it. The next morning, the absence of Ben was impossible to ignore. Usually, someone would know if he'd been sick or called in. But when I asked around, the answers were vague. He probably overslept, one kid said. Another shrugged. Maybe he got a ride late. But something in my gut told me none of that was true. When I got to homeroom, Mr. Grayson was already at the front, his posture rigid, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk. He didn't acknowledge Ben's absence. "Not once, Ethan," he said suddenly, pointing at me. My stomach tightened. "See me after class?" I nodded, trying to act casual. The bell rang, and the students filed out, leaving just the two of us. "You've been curious," he said softly. "You ask questions you shouldn't. That's a dangerous habit." "I'm just worried about Ben," I said. "He's not here." "Is he okay?" Grayson's expression didn't change. "You should worry about yourself, Ethan. I know what you've been doing. Snooping around, asking too many questions. Keep that up, and there will be consequences." I swallowed hard. I wasn't snooping. I just want to make sure everyone's safe. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Safety is not your concern. Mine is. Remember that." The words sent a shiver down my spine. He didn't care about us. He cared about control. After class, I met up with Ryan outside. I was shaking. "He's really scary," I said. "I saw my folder. He's been following me. He knows what I do outside school." Ryan nodded, eyes wide. "Yeah, and now Ben's missing. Maybe you're onto something." We spent the next few days trying to gather information. I asked around discreetly, trying to see if anyone knew why Ben wasn't at school. Oddly enough, some students avoided the topic entirely. Others gave me vague answers that didn't add up. Then came the message. Not a note in my locker this time, but a text. A known number. "Stop asking questions, or you'll be next." I froze. My phone slipped from my hand. This was no longer just about curiosity. I didn't tell anyone, not my mom, not my friends. Who would believe me? A teacher threatening a student. They'd call me paranoid. Over the next week, more students started disappearing. Just small things: skipped school, called in sick, or vanished for a few days without anyone noticing. But patterns emerged. All the students were ones Grayson had taken a particular interest in. All had gotten slightly more attention than the others. It became impossible to ignore. I started tracking their absences in a notebook, writing down names, dates, anything that might help me see a pattern. Every name, every missing day, was a dot connecting to Mr. Grayson. Then I noticed something even stranger. Some of the students who disappeared were showing up later, but different, distant, quiet, avoiding everyone, eyes down, like they were afraid of being noticed. It wasn't just discipline. It wasn't just manipulation. It was fear. One afternoon, while I was walking home, I saw Ben across the street. He was alone, leaning against a lamppost, staring blankly. I ran over. "Ben, are you okay?" He didn't respond. Not at first. Then, slowly, he whispered, "He knows everything. Don't get him mad." Before I could ask more, Grayson's car pulled up. He was watching us, and in that instant, I realized how completely he controlled our lives. We ran in different directions. Ben disappeared into the crowd. I got home and locked my bedroom door, my hands shaking. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Ben's blank face and the folder in Mr. Grayson's desk. Whatever was in there, it wasn't just information. It was leverage. I had to do something. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to get into that folder again. But this time, I wouldn't just peek. I needed proof. Proof that could be shown to someone who could stop him. I didn't know how risky it would be. I didn't know if I'd get caught. But I couldn't sit by and watch him take more kids, or ruin more lives, or threaten me into silence. I had to face him. I knew what I was doing was dangerous. Every step into Mr. Grayson's classroom felt like walking into a lion's den. But I couldn't wait for someone else to notice, because no one would. No one wanted to believe the golden teacher could be dangerous. After school, I waited for him to leave. I watched from the stairwell as he slipped out, briefcase in hand, keys jingling in his pocket. The hallway was empty, echoing with my footsteps as I approached the door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. I pulled the brass key from my pocket, the one I'd found before, and slid it into the lock. It clicked. I took a deep breath and opened the briefcase. Inside were the folders again. I flipped through them carefully, stopping at every name. Some were just notes, grades, personal details, family information. But others were different. There were pages describing behavior in disturbing detail, and photographs I had never seen before of students at the grocery store, students walking home, even some at sports events. And then I saw it, a folder thicker than the rest. My name. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were photos, notes, and recordings. Recordings of conversations. Notes on how I acted, what I did, who I talked to. There were even comments about how I questioned him in class. He wasn't just keeping tabs. He was tracking us. He was controlling us. A sound behind me made me freeze. The classroom door clicked. Looking for something, Ethan. Mr. Grayson was standing there, his eyes narrow, the same cold, calculating look I had come to fear. I froze. You were just curious, he said slowly, stepping closer. Curiosity can get people hurt. You've seen too much. I swallowed hard. I just wanted to know what's in here. That's all. He smirked. You think you're clever. You think you're the only one who notices. But curiosity has consequences. And sometimes, consequences are permanent. My stomach dropped. Then he did something I never expected. He closed the briefcase and leaned back against his desk. I'll make a deal with you. Stop digging, stop asking questions, and nothing will happen. Keep snooping, and you might regret it. Your parents won't help you. No one will. I wanted to run, to grab the folders and escape, but my hands were shaking. Fear paralyzed me. I realized something chilling. He wasn't just strict. He wasn't just controlling. He had been planning this, watching us, preparing us to obey. That night, I told Ryan everything. He was pale. Dude, you're in over your head. He's dangerous. No, I said, but I have to stop him. I can't let him do this to more kids. I need proof. We spent the next few days planning. How could we get into his office without being caught? How could we get copies of the folders and the recordings? The more I thought about it, the more dangerous it felt. But I couldn't stop, because every day I waited, more students disappeared, or came back different, silent, afraid. And the more I waited, the more I realized the truth. Trusting anyone, teachers, adults, even my own friends, wasn't going to save me. The only way to stop him was to expose him myself. Ryan and I met at the old playground behind the library. It was the only place we felt safe enough to talk. No cameras, no adults, just rusting swings and a cracked slide. We can't keep waiting, I said. He's going to ruin more kids if we don't do something. Ryan kicked a stone, staring at the ground. Do you even know what you're up against? He's got everyone fooled. Teachers love him. Parents trust him. If we tell someone without proof, we're just two kids with a crazy story. That's why we get proof, I said. We'll break into his office. Not just his classroom, his real office. The one in the administration wing. Ryan looked at me like I'd lost my mind. That's insane. It's the only way. We planned for days. I learned his schedule, when he left for the lounge, when he had meetings, when he stayed late. Ryan figured out how to jam the hallway cameras with a simple trick he'd seen online. We even practiced sneaking through the hallways after school. It felt like something out of a spy movie, but the stakes were real. Every time I saw one of the changed kids' eyes down, lips tight, I knew I had to go through with it. The night we chose was a Thursday. Grayson had debate club until 6 and usually stayed until 7 finishing paperwork. We'd go in after 7, when the building was almost empty. That afternoon, Ben showed up again. He didn't speak much or just stared at me in the hallway, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. When I asked if he was okay, he whispered, "Stop. You don't know what he can do." Then he walked away. Ryan and I met behind the school at 6:55 p.m. The hallways were dark, the classrooms locked. We slipped inside through the side door, Ryan holding a tiny flashlight. My hands were sweating. "You're sure about this?" Ryan whispered. "No," I said honestly. "But we have to do it anyway." We crept down the hall, the only sound our sneakers squeaking faintly on the tile. We reached the administration wing. Mr. Grayson's nameplate gleamed on the office door. Locked. Of course. I pulled out the key I'd swiped from his briefcase weeks earlier. The gamble. It slid in smoothly. The door opened. The office was darker than I expected, full of filing cabinets and shelves. On the desk sat a laptop, still on, the glow of the screen casting long shadows. And there, against the wall, was a cabinet with a heavy lock. "This is it," I whispered. Ryan looked nervous. "What if he comes back?" "He won't, not yet." I knelt by the cabinet. The lock was a simple padlock. I used the small bolt cutter I'd borrowed from my dad's toolbox. It snapped open with a quiet click. Inside were folders. More than in the briefcase. Twice as many. And these were worse. I pulled one at random. Not only names and notes, but copies of emails, screenshots of texts, even surveillance photos from angles no teacher should have. He'd been inside our digital lives. Then I saw a separate folder labeled incidents. Inside were reports of meetings with students at times, places, outcomes. But none of these meetings were listed on any school schedule. Some were in off-campus locations, coffee shops, libraries, parks. My stomach turned. Ryan whispered, This is sick." I took out my phone and began snapping pictures of everything. Page after page, folder after folder. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. Then, from the hallway, we heard footsteps. Ryan froze. "Someone's coming." I shoved the folders back, snapped the lock shut, and closed the cabinet. We ducked behind the desk just as the door creaked open. "Who's in here?" It was him. His silhouette filled the doorway, the glow from the hall behind him. He stepped inside slowly, like he already knew. "Ethan," he said softly. "I know you're here." Ryan grabbed my arm, whispering, "We have to go." Grayson's footsteps came closer. "You think you're clever," he murmured, "but you're just like the rest." I felt Ryan's grip tighten. "Now," he hissed out. We bolted out. We knocked over a chair and darted past him, out the door and down the hall. His voice followed us, calm, but cold. "You've just made the biggest mistake of your life." We didn't stop running until we were out of the building, gasping in the cold night air. I looked at my phone. The photos were there. Proof, finally, proof. But even as relief washed over me, a chill settled in my chest, because now he knew. And Mr. Grayson was not the kind of man to let things go. The next morning, I felt it immediately. The way Mr. Grayson looked at me in class wasn't just observation anymore, it was predatory. Every glance, every passing by my desk was like a reminder that he knew exactly what I had done. Ryan noticed it too. During lunch, he whispered, "He's onto us." I saw him looking at us. Not just in class. Like he was planning something. I nodded. "I know. I can feel it. We have proof, but I don't think that will stop him." By midweek, strange things started happening outside school. My locker had been rifled through, even though I'd locked it tight. Books were scattered, my phone screen cracked. And there was a new note, shoved into my backpack, written in the same precise handwriting. "I warned you. Don't make me prove a point." Fear settled deep in my chest, but anger fueled me. I wasn't backing down. Not after everything. That afternoon, Ryan and I decided to visit Ben. He had been quiet, almost catatonic, since that day outside school, and I needed to know if he had seen anything else. Ben's house was just a few blocks away. When we arrived, his door was ajar. That should have been the first warning, but we were desperate. Inside, the living room was empty, except for a single note on the coffee table. "Tell him to stop, or next time it will be worse." Ben wasn't home. His parents weren't home. The house was eerily quiet. "We need to call someone," Ryan said, voice shaking. "This is too much." I shook my head. "If we call the police now, he could cover everything up. We need to be smart. Evidence first, then the police." We left, uneasy and tense. On the way back, I noticed a car parked near my street, black and marked. The windows were tinted. For a second, I thought I imagined it. But then, as we turned the corner, I caught a glimpse of him behind the wheel. Mr. Grayson, watching, waiting. I grabbed Ryan's arm. "He's following us." Ryan's face went pale. "We need to go somewhere safe." We didn't go home. Instead, we ran to the library, hoping the public space would keep him from acting. Inside, we huddled behind the stacks, trying to catch our breath. He's insane," Ryan whispered. "What if he tries something?" I shook my head. "We can't let him scare us." We have the proof. We just need the right moment to use it. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. Another message. A no number. Meet me tonight. Alone. Don't make a sound. My stomach sank. He wants to talk. Ryan asked, incredulous. I looked at the message again. I don't know. But he knows I have the folders. He wants them back. Or worse. That night, I stayed up, replaying every detail, every warning. I knew he was dangerous, but I also knew one thing. If I handed over the evidence or met him alone, we would have no chance. We had to act first. The next day, I went to the library alone to make copies of the folders and photos, scanning everything. Ryan stayed home, pretending to be sick, but we coordinated through text. By midnight, we had digital copies stored securely, ready to send to the authorities. Just in case, I knew one thing for sure. Mr. Grayson wasn't just a teacher with secrets. He was someone who had meticulously studied us, manipulated us, and intended to control us permanently if we didn't stop him. And now that he knew I was onto him, the real hunt had begun. By the next week, the entire school felt different. Hallways that once bustled with noise now felt heavy with silence whenever I walked through. People stared but quickly looked away. Ryan and I weren't just two kids anymore, we were targets. Grayson had started showing his teeth. Subtle at first. My locker combination mysteriously stopped working one morning, and when I finally got it open, my notebooks were gone. Ryan's car window was smashed in the school parking lot. He didn't leave notes anymore. He wanted us to know it was him, but he still smiled in class, still cracked jokes, still played the cool teacher for everyone else. That was the scariest part, how good he was at pretending. Ryan whispered to me one day during math. He's not even trying to hide it now. He wants us scared. I'm done being scared, I said. That night, we met again at the old playground. Our conversations had turned from whispers of fear to cold planning. We weren't kids sneaking around anymore. We were strategizing like soldiers. Ryan pulled out a USB drive from his pocket. This is everything we have. The scans, the photos, the notes. All backed up. Good, I said. Because tomorrow, we're going to end this. We had a plan. The school board was holding a closed-door meeting with the superintendent about budget issues. Grayson would be there to present his new mentorship program. We'd show up with copies of everything and the board wouldn't be able to ignore it. But we also knew Grayson wasn't going to sit and let us stroll in with evidence. He'd try to stop us. So we set a trap. We sent him an anonymous email from a burner account. We know what you've been doing. Meet us in your office at 6:30 a.m. if you want the files back. Ryan stared at me after I hit send. You're baiting him. Yes, I said. If he's busy chasing a ghost at 6:30 a.m., he won't see us at the board meeting at 8. That's risky. Ryan muttered. Everything's risky, I said. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. Every noise in the house felt like a footstep, every shadow like someone waiting outside my window. My phone buzzed at 3 a.m. a message from an unknown number. You think you're clever. Tomorrow will be your last chance. I didn't reply. At 6:15 a.m., Ryan texted me, he's there. I saw his car at the school. I exhaled slowly. The bait had worked. We grabbed our folders, the USB drives, everything, and went straight to the district office downtown. At 8 a.m., we walked into the boardroom. The room was full of superintendent, board members, even a local reporter doing a story on the new program. I felt like my heart was going to explode. Ryan squeezed my shoulder. We're doing this, he whispered. When they called on Grayson to present, we stood up instead. I'm sorry to interrupt, I said, my voice shaking but clear. But this can't wait. Every head turned. Grayson wasn't there. That was the point. I handed the superintendent the folders. This is evidence of Mr. Grayson's misconduct with students. Unauthorized meetings, surveillance, manipulation. We've copied everything. For a moment, the room went silent. Then the superintendent frowned, flipping through the pages. This is serious, he said. The board members whispered to each other. The reporter's camera clicked rapidly. I felt a wave of relief. We'd done it. It was over. Or so I thought. Because just then, the boardroom door swung open, and Mr. Grayson walked in. He wasn't smiling. Not anymore. His eyes went straight to me, dark and furious. Sit down, he said quietly. Nobody else spoke. I said sit down. He repeated, louder this time. Ryan whispered, oh my God. Grayson took a step forward, then another. His jaw clenched. You think you can destroy me? He hissed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. The superintendent stood. Mr. Grayson, I'm afraid Grayson slammed his hand on the table. They're lying. His voice cracked. They're delusional. You're going to ruin a good man's life over a few fake documents. But the room had changed. The board members weren't nodding anymore. They were staring at him with wide eyes. The superintendent calmly said, Mr. Grayson, I think you should step out while we review these materials. His face turned red. You're making a mistake, he said, voice shaking. I stared at him, clutching Ryan's hand under the table. We'd done it. We'd ripped off the mask. But as the security officer escorted him out, Grayson turned his head toward me, his expression twisting into something I'd never forget. This isn't over, he mouthed, and I believed him. After Grayson was escorted out of the boardroom, the air finally felt lighter, but the tension didn't disappear. Everyone was still staring at us, the students who had exposed the teacher no one suspected. The superintendent cleared her throat. "We will review all this evidence immediately. Mr. Grayson has been suspended pending a full investigation. Thank you for bringing this forward safely." I sank into my chair, finally letting the adrenaline leave my body. Ryan exhaled, slumping beside me. "We did it," he whispered. "We did," I said, though my stomach was still tight. The next few days were surreal. Police officers came to the school, questioning teachers, reviewing attendance records, and interviewing students. News crews called, wanting statements. Grayson didn't appear at school. His car was gone, and the briefcase that had haunted my nightmares was confiscated as evidence. Ben, Leah, and the other students who had been manipulated slowly started opening up. They shared stories, late-night meetings, emails, messages, subtle threats. Some of them cried, others were angry. I realized how much we'd all been living under a carefully crafted shadow, and how isolated we had been. Even while surrounded by teachers and classmates, it was a relief to finally hear that we weren't imagining things. The folder, the surveillance, the notes, all real. Grayson's reign of control was over, but for me, the trust I once had in teachers was gone. I walked into class a week later, the new substitute teacher introducing herself politely. I smiled out of habit, but my eyes were wary. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't volunteer. I didn't trust. Ryan nudged me. "You okay?" "I will be," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure. "Just, everything feels different now. At home, I explained everything to my mom. She held me tightly, whispering that she was proud of me for being brave. But even in her arms, I felt the lingering chill of knowing that adults, even the ones we trusted, could hide dangerous secrets. Weeks later, we learned that Grayson was charged with multiple counts: harassment, stalking, and manipulating minors. There were ongoing investigations into his past schools and previous employment. Some of the students who had disappeared for days had been coerced into silence, manipulated into thinking it was normal. Others had faced psychological trauma that would take time to heal. The police praised us for the evidence we provided. Without our courage and the careful planning of Ryan and me, who knew how long he could have continued? But even with justice, the scars remained. I walked past his old classroom one day and felt my chest tighten. The fluorescent lights, the empty chairs, the blackboard. It all reminded me of how close I had come to being trapped under his control. I realized something important. It's not just about bravery. It's about paying attention, noticing the signs, questioning authority when something doesn't feel right. And sometimes, the adults who should protect you can't or won't. I don't think I'll ever trust a teacher the same way again. Not fully. Not without seeing the proof for myself. But I also know one thing. I won't let fear control me. I survived. We survived. And because of that, I learned a lesson that will stay with me forever. Sometimes, the people we should trust the most, the ones standing at the front of the classroom, are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. And when we stop blindly trusting, we might just save ourselves. The folders, the photos, the emails, all of it is still on my phone. A reminder, a warning, a proof that curiosity, courage, and the willingness to question can change everything. And I will never stop noticing.